Hello guys, I'm Karina Borgia-Lacroix, the title girl and owner of American Real Title. We're a real estate title and escrow closing company, and we're located in Fort Myers, Florida. In last week's Title Girl episode, we talked about the FAR access contract and all of the pitfalls, the things that people normally miss. So in this week's Title Girl episode, we're going to be discussing the standard residential contract. And yes, there's a difference, so keep up with us. Today, I am pleased to have David Lang, who is a realtor with Keller Williams, Fort Myers, and the Islands. David and I have been working together for many years, and he, I think, is the expert in the business, so who better to have on today to explain this than David? Welcome, David.
Thank you.
All right.
For having me.
Okay, so a few weeks ago, David and I were sitting at a meeting, and we were discussing his clients that were moving down from northern states and buying properties here in Florida. And there were some issues regarding the contracts they were signing, whether they were a standard or an access contract, and their expectations through the process. So I wanted David to explain those things to you so that you're better aware when you're having clients that coming from up north. What do you...
Well, you know, the as-is contract's used almost exclusively in our area. But I think what people forget, especially us agents, we forget that a lot of times when someone's selling their home up north and moving down here, they're not using as-is contracts up north. So their expectation, they saw how the process went and their expectations for fixing items. Then they come down here and it's a little bit different. And I don't think that we're doing a great job explaining the differences to them.
So when they're there up north, their contracts specify that they need to repair things for their buyers?
Yeah, every state's different, but from my experience, a lot of times they have repair provisions within those contracts.
Okay.
They sell the property, they put it under contract, they have an inspection done, then the buyer dictates, well, here I found these things that are wrong, I want you to fix them, and they're contractually obligated to do so.
And when they use the access contract here, then that's
it's a little different, because even though you have a very, very buyer-friendly inspection contingency within the contract, the seller's not obligated to fix anything or do anything special. So it usually ends up after inspection, you almost enter a renegotiating period, which is a little foreign to someone who just went through a different process up north in Ohio or whatever.
Right. Yeah, so that kind of leads to the next question, which is telling our audience the main differences that you think you see in your access residential contract and the standard contract. What are the main differences between the two?
Well, most of the contracts are very, very similar. The biggest difference between the standard contract is there's actually a provision for general repairs, wood-destroying organisms, which most people think of as pests or termites, and permit closeouts. If there happens to be any permits that are opened and not closed, there is a agreement within the standard contract that the seller is obligated to repair any of those deficiencies up to a certain limit. And the default limit's usually 1.5% of the purchase price, but that's negotiable. You can change that as well.
Okay, so there is some negotiating ability within the standard. I know that some agents feel like they sign that standard contract, they're unaware of what, the legalities of it, and they feel like they're stuck in it and there's no negotiating after the fact.
The one thing that people don't think about or don't read is there's actually some exclusions in the standard contract. So if the inspector finds cosmetic or maintenance things, you know, a spot on the carpet or some chipped paint or some missing caulk or grout or whatever, those are cosmetic and maintenance items that are excluded from the seller taking care of. Now in an as-is contract, because the buyer has a lot of the power, they could just simply back out for no reason. The buyer can still demand that those things be fixed, but in a standard contract they can't.
Okay, so...
A question from a viewer, Jason Woodbury, who is responsible for WDO repairs?
Well, in a standard contract, the seller would, up to the limit that's within the contract.
And the access...
The as-is contract, it ends up being a renegotiation within the inspection period.
Yeah, where you would go in and ask if they would be willing to cover the cost for those repairs. And if they're willing to do it, then you would put that as an addendum in the contract. If they're not, then you could choose to either move forward with the contract or cancel the contract. Okay, so finally, what are the major points you would like to stress to the other agents in the field when choosing which contract to use with their clients?
Probably good practice is to explain to buyers down here the difference between the two contracts. And in doing so, it may be a little different than what they just experienced up in their, when they sold their house in the northern state. That way you cover your bases. The buyer has full control over it. He wants to submit an as-is contract to try to get the price down as much as possible, but then understand that they may not be able to nickel and dime a lot of the little things that show up on a home inspection. However, if something does major show up, or some major, the hot water heater, the AC is not working, those are things that we would still ask the seller to do, and many times they will repair.
Okay. So, I mean, and when we first talked about this, which is why I wanted to do this video, I was kind of shocked because although I've been in the business all this time, I've been here in Florida, when we were talking about the expectations of the buyers coming down, and I was kind of shocked because my thought is you have a buyer in Ohio, let's say, like we talked about, and they just sold their house and they were required to replace a few things. Let's say they spent $10,000 repairing things within the contract that they had, and then they move down here and they get into an access contract not realizing what they're doing, and the seller has $10,000 worth of damage that they would like repaired after they've done the inspection, and the buyer says, no, I don't have to, you don't have to buy the property. So now you've got people that are coming from up north extremely upset, leaving a pretty sour taste in their mouth as they're moving into our state. So, and we certainly don't want that to happen with our real estate agents, who are fabulous, and you guys do so much work here in the market. We don't want anyone upset coming down and questioning what they're doing. So now, I want to thank David for being with us today. I hope to have you again. This was fun.
Yeah.
If you want to reach David, go to his website at www.delangteamrealty.com. Again, that's www.delangteamrealty.com. Okay, agents, with all of this information in hand, I want you to go out there, get some contracts, get them signed, and send them over to us, to the experts at American Real Title, to do the closing for you. So I always finish my videos by asking how else we can help you. Leave me a message below, send me an email, visit us on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, or our website at www.americanrealtitle.com. As always, a reminder that I will be answering questions in real time tomorrow and every Wednesday from 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. So any questions that you have, do it that way. I do that through my Facebook business and my personal pages. And stay tuned for next week's video, where I talk about the escrow accounts that your mortgage company sets up for you, what they mean, and how to understand them better. I know there are a lot of confusion out there, especially now with the taxes and the reproration of things when the mortgage companies recalculate your escrow accounts and you get a notification in the mail. We'll talk about that next week. Again, I'm Karina Borgia-Lacroix, the title girl and owner of American Real Title, where we perfect the art of closing the deal. Thank you.